Dramily.com, unlimited drama series.
No one expects their wife to call them a backup plan, at least not before dessert arrives. But there I was, standing behind our kitchen door, like some amateur detective, listening to Vanna Hesslor laugh with her friends about how I was just a backup until something better locked in. The words hit me like a freight train, but I stayed frozen behind that door, my hand gripping the handle so tight my knuckles went white. Through the crack, I could see Vanna gesturing dramatically with her wine glass, her blonde hair catching the light from our expensive chandelier, the one I'd bought her for our second anniversary. "Marlowe's sweet and all," she was saying to her three closest friends, who sat around our dining table like vultures picking at the remnants of the dinner I'd cooked. "But let's be honest, girls. He's a tech startup guy with big dreams and a small bank account. I need security, not another dreamer who thinks his next app will change the world." Jenna Morrison, her college roommate, leaned forward with that hungry expression she got whenever gossip was involved. "So, what's the plan? You can't string him along forever." Van took another sip of wine, our best bottle, naturally, and shrugged. "I'm already working on it. There's this guy, Tate Kincaid. He owns 3 restaurants downtown and just bought that new development on 5th Street. Real money, not startup fantasy money." My stomach churned as the pieces clicked into place. The late nights she claimed were work events, the new clothes that appeared in her closet, the way she'd started checking her phone constantly, always turning the screen away from me. "What about Marlowe?" asked Lisette Chang, the influencer who documented every meal she ate for her 50,000 followers. "What about him?" Vanna laughed, and the sound was like glass breaking. "He'll figure it out eventually. Men always do. But by then, I'll be settled with someone who can actually provide the lifestyle I deserve." The third friend, Rebecca Torres, nodded knowingly. "Smart move. No point wasting your best years on potential when you could have guarantees." I felt my world tilt sideways. 3 years together. 3 years of building what I thought was a life, a partnership, a future. 3 years of her encouraging my work, testing my prototypes, sitting beside me during late-night coding sessions. All of it had been an act. "The funny thing is," Vanna continued, "he actually thinks I believe in his little project, that inventory management system he's been obsessing over. I've been so supportive, haven't I? Asking all the right questions, giving feedback, playing the perfect girlfriend." "You deserve an award," Jenna said. "I couldn't fake interest in computer stuff for 3 minutes, let alone 3 years." "It's not that hard when you know it's temporary," Vanna replied. "Besides, he's so grateful for any encouragement. It's actually kind of pathetic." That word, pathetic, echoed in my head as I carefully backed away from the door. My bare feet made no sound on the hardwood floors as I moved through our apartment, seeing everything differently now. The framed photos of us traveling together, the coffee mug she'd given me that said, "World's Best Developer," the spare key to my office that I'd given her 6 months ago. I grabbed my laptop bag from the bedroom and started packing with mechanical precision. Laptop, external drives, charging cables, the notebook where I kept my backup passwords. Everything else could stay. Material things didn't matter anymore. The prototype for my inventory management system was stored on 3 separate drives, plus cloud backup. The business registration was in my name only. I'd learned that lesson from watching other startup founders get burned by partners. The intellectual property filings were time-stamped and documented. Vanna had helped test the system, sure, but she'd never owned any part of it. From the dining room, I could still hear their voices, though I couldn't make out individual words anymore. It didn't matter. I'd heard enough. I pulled up the lease agreement on my laptop. The extension I'd signed just last week wouldn't take effect for another 72 hours. I opened my email and sent a cancellation notice to our landlord, citing the clause that allowed withdrawal before the extension period began. The security deposit would cover any fees. Next, I logged into our shared bank account, the one where we'd been saving for a wedding that would apparently never happen. I transferred my contributions back to my personal account, leaving only what Vanna had deposited. Every transaction was documented, every dollar accounted for. The startup prototype lived on a secure server I'd set up using my own credit card. I changed all the access codes and transferred the files to a new server under a different company name. 3 years of work, hundreds of hours of coding, testing, and refinement. All of it was mine, and now it would stay that way. I packed 2 suitcases with clothes and essentials, leaving behind anything that felt contaminated by our shared life. The watch she'd given me, the cologne she liked, the books we'd read together. None of it mattered anymore. By 11:30, her friends were finally leaving. I heard them gathering their purses and coats, exchanging air kisses and promises to call soon. The front door closed with a soft click, and Vanna's heels tapped across the floor as she cleaned up. I waited until I heard the shower running in the master bathroom. Then I grabbed my bags and walked out the front door, leaving my keys on the kitchen counter next to a single sheet of paper. The note was brief. Found an opportunity I couldn't pass up. Don't wait for me. Let her think I'd run off with a client or taken some sudden business trip. Let her wonder and worry and make excuses to her friends. By the time she figured out what had really happened, I'd be long gone. I drove through the night, heading west on highways that stretched endlessly under star-filled skies. My phone buzzed constantly, texts and calls from Vanna that I didn't answer. Around 3 in the morning, I pulled into a gas station and powered down the device, removing the SIM card and dropping it into a trash bin. The backup plan was officially offline. 3 days later, I was sitting in a coffee shop in Denver, reading the angry emails Vanna had sent to my business account before I'd changed those passwords too. The messages started confused, then grew progressively more frantic. Marlo, what's going on? Your phone goes straight to voicemail. The landlord called about the lease cancellation. This has to be a mistake. I went to your office. It's empty. Where are you? This isn't funny anymore. Call me back right now. The final message sent just 6 hours ago was pure rage. I don't know what game you're playing, but you can't just disappear. We have a life together. We have responsibilities. You're being incredibly selfish and immature. I deleted them all without responding. Vanna Heslor was no longer my problem. Denver felt like a good place to start over. Big enough to get lost in, close enough to major tech hubs to matter, far enough from my old life to breathe freely. I'd found a short-term rental apartment online and paid 3 months up front with cash from my emergency fund. The new business registration took 2 days to process. Trasker Solutions, LLC, specialized in inventory management software for small and medium businesses. The prototype I'd spent 3 years developing was now the foundation of something entirely mine. I'd always been good at coding, but the business side had intimidated me. Vanna used to handle our social calendar, our dinner reservations, anything that required talking to people. Now I discovered I was better at sales than I'd ever imagined. Desperation, it turned out, was an excellent motivator. My first client was a local restaurant owner who was drowning in paperwork and losing money on waste. I customized the software for his needs, implemented it over a weekend, and had him saving 15% on food costs within the first month. He recommended me to 2 other restaurant owners, who hired me on the spot. Word spread quickly in Denver's tight-knit business community. Small retailers, service companies, even a local brewery wanted to see what my system could do for them. Each implementation taught me something new, made the software stronger, more versatile. 6 months after leaving Vanna, I had 12 clients and a waiting list. The apartment had been upgraded to a small office space downtown. I'd hired a part-time assistant and was considering bringing on a junior developer. That's when Vanna found me. The email arrived on a Tuesday morning, sent through my business contact form since she no longer had my personal address. Marlo, I know you're angry, but we need to talk. What you did was wrong, and you know it. I helped develop that software. I tested it, gave feedback, contributed ideas. I deserve compensation for my work. My lawyers says I have a strong case for co-ownership. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. We can settle this like adults. I read it 3 times, then started laughing. The sound echoed through my empty office, growing louder until I was practically cackling at my computer screen. She thought she could claim ownership of my work? After everything I'd overheard that night in the kitchen? I forwarded the email to the intellectual property lawyer I'd hired when the business started taking off. Janet Reeves was a sharp woman in her 50s who specialized in protecting small tech companies from exactly this kind of claim. Her response came back within an hour. Let her try. Your documentation is bulletproof. She was right. Every line of code was time-stamped and version controlled under my name. The initial concept documentation dated back 4 years, long before Vanna and I had even met. The business registration, patent applications, and copyright filings were all in my name alone. Vanna's contributions had been limited to user testing, clicking buttons and reporting bugs like any quality assurance tester. I had emails where she explicitly stated she didn't understand the technical aspects and was just happy to help however she could. Her own words would destroy any claim of co-creation. But I decided to let her make her move. Sometimes the best defense is letting your opponent expose their own weaknesses. The legal papers arrived 2 weeks later, served by a process server who found my office address through the business registration. Vanna was suing for 50% ownership of Trasker Solutions, claiming she'd been an equal partner in developing the core technology. Janet filed our response the same day. Along with the technical documentation, we included a fascinating piece of evidence I'd almost forgotten about, a video recording from one of our testing sessions, where Vanna explicitly stated on camera that she didn't understand any of this computer stuff, but was happy to be helpful. The case lasted exactly 3 weeks. Vanna's lawyer withdrew the claim after reviewing our evidence package, probably realizing his client had lied to him about her level of involvement. The final court filing included a notation that the claim was frivolous and without merit. But the best part wasn't the legal victory. The best part was what happened to Vanna's reputation when word of the failed lawsuit spread through our old social circle. I didn't have to say anything. I didn't have to defend myself or tell my side of the story. The court documents spoke for themselves, and people drew their own conclusions about someone who would file a baseless lawsuit against their former partner. Jenna Morrison, who'd been so supportive of Vanna's backup plan that night in the kitchen, posted a passive-aggressive Facebook status about people who try to take credit for other people's success. Lisette Chang unfollowed Vanna on all social media platforms. Rebecca Torres started liking posts from mutual friends that celebrated entrepreneurship and hard work. The social media archaeology was fascinating to watch from a distance. Old photos of Vanna and me together disappeared from her accounts. Posts where she'd bragged about supporting her boyfriend's startup dreams were quietly deleted. She was trying to erase the evidence of her own contradictions, but the internet never forgets. Meanwhile, my business kept growing. The legal victory had generated some positive press coverage in local tech blogs. Small developer defeats. Frivolous lawsuit wasn't exactly front-page news, but it established credibility in the startup community. I was invited to speak at a small business conference about protecting intellectual property. Then, a larger conference about inventory management trends. Then, a workshop for aspiring entrepreneurs about building sustainable tech companies. Somewhere along the way, I realized I was having fun. Real fun. Not the performative happiness I'd felt with Vanna. I was building something meaningful, helping other businesses succeed, creating value in the world. The speaking engagements led to consulting opportunities. The consulting work led to bigger clients. Bigger clients led to partnership discussions with established companies who wanted to license my software. 2 years after leaving Denver, I sold Trasker Solutions to a major enterprise software company for an amount that made my old startup dreams look quaint. The acquisition included a 3-year consulting contract and an agreement to develop next-generation features for their platform. I used part of the money to write a book about the experience. Not a memoir. I wasn't narcissistic enough to think my personal drama was that interesting. Instead, I wrote a practical guide about building and scaling software companies, protecting intellectual property, and navigating the transition from solo developer to business owner. The Solo Founder's Handbook was published 18 months later by a respected business press. The advance was modest, but the book found its audience among aspiring entrepreneurs and independent developers. Sales were steady, reviews were positive, and I was invited to more speaking events. That's how I ended up at the Chicago Business Expo, sitting behind a table stacked with books, signing copies for a line of eager readers. It was my 15th signing event, and I'd gotten comfortable with the routine. Smile, make eye contact, ask for their name, write something encouraging, move to the next person. The expo hall was buzzing with energy. Hundreds of vendors, thousands of attendees. The constant hum of networking and
2 key cards. You asked for 2. Who was the second 4?
My colleague needed a place.
Your colleague who calls you baby in her texts?
Watch more on Grammarly.com.
deal making. My publisher had booked me a prime spot near the main entrance, and the line had been steady all morning. I was halfway through signing a book for a young woman who reminded me of myself at 25, eager, nervous, full of big ideas, when I heard a familiar voice behind her. "Excuse me, I need to speak with him." My hand froze mid-signature. I knew that voice. I'd heard it laugh about backup plans and pathetic dreams. I'd heard it lie to lawyers and friends and probably to herself. I looked up slowly, and there she was, Vanna Heslor, standing at the edge of my signing line like a ghost from a life I'd almost forgotten. She looked different, thinner maybe, with new lines around her eyes. Her hair was shorter, her clothes less expensive. The confident posture I remembered had been replaced by something more desperate, more uncertain. "Marlowe," she said, and her voice cracked slightly on my name. "We need to talk." I finished signing the book for the young entrepreneur, handed it back with a smile, and looked up at Vanna. The line behind her had grown quiet, sensing drama. "I'm sorry," I said calmly, "but this is a book signing event. If you'd like to purchase a copy, you're welcome to wait in line like everyone else." "Don't do this," she said, stepping closer to the table. "Please, I just need 5 minutes." That's when I heard another familiar voice, though this one made me smile instead of tense up. "Is there a problem here?" Kalia Heslor, now Kalia Trasker, appeared beside my table, carrying 2 cups of coffee and wearing the kind of confident expression that made people step back and reconsider their choices. Vanna's face went pale. "Kalia? What are you doing here?" My wife set down the coffee cups and took her seat beside me, the nameplate in front of her clearly displaying Kalia Trasker, co-author. She'd contributed 2 chapters to my book about the legal aspects of intellectual property protection, drawing on her experience as a paralegal and her law school education. "I'm supporting my husband at his book signing," Kalia said evenly. "The question is, what are you doing here?" The line behind Vanna had grown restless. Security was already moving in our direction, alerted by the crowd dynamics. I caught the eye of the nearest guard and gave a subtle shake of my head. "Not yet." "Your husband?" Vanna's voice was barely a whisper. "You married him?" 2 years ago," I said, reaching over to squeeze Kalia's hand. Kalia was the one who helped me with the legal paperwork when I left Denver. She understood what I was trying to build. It was true. Kalia had been working as a paralegal at the firm I'd hired to handle my business registration. She'd been professional, efficient, and surprisingly insightful about the challenges facing solo entrepreneurs. When I'd mentioned I was struggling with the legal aspects of client contracts, she'd recommended several resources and offered to review my templates. One coffee meeting had led to another. Professional collaboration had evolved into friendship, then into something deeper. She understood ambition, respected hard work, and had never once made me feel like a backup plan. "You can't be serious," Vanna said, looking back and forth between us. "She's my sister." "Was," Kalia corrected. "That relationship ended when I found out what you really thought about the people who cared about you." The security guard reached our table. "Is everything all right here?" "This woman is disrupting the signing," Kalia said calmly. "Could you please escort her out?" "Wait," Vanna said desperately. "Marlowe, please. I made mistakes. I was young and stupid and scared. But we had something real. You can't just throw that away." I stood up slowly, the movement causing the entire line to shift and crane their necks for a better view. Someone in the back was definitely recording this on their phone. You're right, I said. We did have something real. I had real feelings for you. I was really planning a future with you. I really believed we were building something together. Her face brightened for just a moment. But you, I continued, you had a backup plan, and now you're looking at how that worked out for you. The security guard stepped forward. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to come with me. Vanna looked around desperately, at the crowd, at Kalia, at me. This isn't over, she said. Yes, I replied, sitting back down and picking up my pen. It really is. Security escorted her toward the exit, while I turned to the next person in line, a middle-aged man who looked slightly stunned by what he'd just witnessed. Sorry about that, I said with a smile. What's your name? The video went viral within 6 hours. Someone in the line had live-streamed the entire confrontation, and by evening, Backup Plan Book Signing Drama was trending on 3 social media platforms. The comments were overwhelmingly supportive. People loved the story of the underdog entrepreneur who'd turned his life around after being betrayed. But more importantly, the video caught the attention of a major publisher who'd been considering my proposal for a follow-up book. The second act, Rebuilding After Betrayal, was under contract within a month, with a significantly larger advance and a national book tour. Kali and I watched the whole thing unfold from our hotel room that night, reading comments and sharing the best ones with each other. Listen to this one, she said, scrolling through her phone. This guy is living proof that the best revenge is massive success. That has 3,000 likes. Here's my favorite, I replied. His wife is gorgeous and successful, and his ex looks like she shops at gas stations now. That's probably mean, but I'm not going to pretend it doesn't feel good. The attention was flattering, but it also made me nervous. Viral fame was unpredictable, and I'd built my new life on stability and control. The last thing I wanted was for this drama to overshadow the actual work I was trying to do. But Kalaya, who'd grown up in a family where drama was a competitive sport, understood how to manage the narrative better than I did. We control the story, she said. You give 2 or 3 interviews to legitimate business publications, focus on the professional lessons, keep it classy. Don't mention her by name, don't get personal. Just talk about protecting your intellectual property and building resilience. She was right. The interviews I gave over the next few weeks focused on entrepreneurship, not revenge. I talked about the importance of proper documentation, the challenges of scaling a solo business, and the value of finding partners who shared your vision. The personal drama became a footnote to a larger story about professional success. That was exactly how I wanted it. Meanwhile, the viral attention had unintended consequences for Vanna. The internet is remarkably good at detective work when it's motivated. Within days, people had identified her from the video and were digging into her background. They found the failed lawsuit, the contradictory social media posts, and enough circumstantial evidence to piece together the basic story. She became a cautionary tale about greed and betrayal. Memes were created. Her photo appeared in articles about toxic relationship behaviors. Someone even created a fake Twitter account called Backup Plan Vanna that posted satirical content about using people for personal gain. I didn't participate in any of that. I didn't need to. The internet had decided she was the villain in this story, and nothing I could say would change that narrative one way or the other. But I did keep track of what was happening to her, partly out of curiosity and partly out of a desire to make sure she wasn't planning any new schemes. The social media archaeology revealed a pattern of declining circumstances. Her posts had shifted from luxury restaurants and designer clothes to motivational quotes about starting over and learning from mistakes. The expensive apartment was gone, replaced by what looked like a much smaller place in a less fashionable neighborhood. More telling were the things that weren't posted anymore. No photos with groups of friends, no check-ins at trendy events, no mentions of romantic relationships. She'd gone from social butterfly to social pariah, and the isolation was obvious to anyone paying attention. Kalia's family had cut ties with her completely after learning the full story of what had happened between us. Her parents, who'd always favored their younger daughter anyway, made it clear that Vanna's behavior was unacceptable and that they supported Kalia's decision to help me. She made her choices, Kalia's mother had said when Vanna tried to reconcile. Now she gets to live with the consequences. The rejection from her own family seemed to break something in Vanna. Her social media posts became increasingly desperate, filled with vague references to people who abandon you when you need them most, and fair-weather friends who judge without understanding. But the most satisfying development was what happened to Tate Kincaid, the man she'd planned to leave me for. The viral video had mentioned him by name. Someone in the comments had connected the dots from old social media posts and identified him as the real money guy Vanna had been pursuing. His restaurants and development projects suddenly found themselves under scrutiny from people who didn't appreciate his role in breaking up a relationship. Online reviews for his businesses took a hit. Social media posts about his establishments were flooded with comments about supporting cheaters and karma coming around. It wasn't enough to destroy his businesses, but it was enough to hurt his reputation and cost him customers. More importantly, it made him radioactive to other women in their social circle. Nobody wanted to date someone who'd been publicly identified as a relationship wrecker, especially when the story had become internet famous. Vanna had lost her backup plan and her primary plan in one fell swoop. The man she'd thought would provide security and status wanted nothing to do with her, now that she came with baggage and negative publicity. 6 months after the book signing incident, I was invited to speak at a major entrepreneurship conference in Las Vegas. The event drew thousands of attendees from around the world, and my session on building resilient businesses was scheduled for the main stage. Kaylee and I flew in the day before, and I spent the evening reviewing my presentation and trying to calm my nerves. Speaking to large crowds still made me anxious, despite all the practice I'd gotten over the past year. The morning of my talk, I was backstage running through my opening lines when the event coordinator approached me with a concerned expression. "Mr. Trasker, we have a situation. Security found someone trying to sneak into the venue through a service entrance. She claims she knows you and needs to speak with you urgently." My stomach dropped. Let me guess. Blonde woman, early 30s, probably looks desperate? That's her exactly. She says her name is Vanna, and that you'll want to hear what she has to say. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. Where is she now? Security office. We can have her removed from the property. But she's being pretty insistent that you'll regret not talking to her. Part of me was curious about what she thought she could possibly say that would matter at this point. But a larger part of me recognized this for what it was. Another attempt to insert herself into my success story. Another bid for relevance in a life that had moved on without her. Have them escort her off the property, I said, and make sure she understands that any future attempts to contact me will be considered harassment. Will do. And sir, your wife asked me to give you this. He handed me a note in Kalia's handwriting. You've got this. Show them what real success looks like. 20 minutes later, I walked onto the main stage in front of 3,000 entrepreneurs, business owners, and investors. The lights were bright, the crowd was energetic, and I felt more confident than I had in years. My presentation went perfectly. I talked about the importance of protecting your intellectual property, building strong legal foundations, and surrounding yourself with people who genuinely support your vision. I shared lessons learned from scaling a solo business and advice for navigating the transition from startup to acquisition. The audience was engaged, asking thoughtful questions and taking notes throughout the session. When I finished, the applause was sustained and enthusiastic. Several people approached me afterward to discuss consulting opportunities and speaking engagements. But the best moment came when I walked off stage and found Kalia waiting in the wings with a huge smile on her face. That was incredible, she said, giving me a hug. You had them completely captivated. Did security handle the situation? I asked. Oh, yes. She's been banned from the property and warned about harassment laws. But honestly, I don't think she'll be a problem anymore. She looked pretty defeated when they escorted her out. That evening, we celebrated at one of Vegas's best restaurants, toasting the success of my presentation and the continued growth of our consulting business. Kalia had become a full partner in the venture, handling the legal and business development aspects, while I focused on the technical and speaking components. You know what I realized today? I said over dessert. I spent so many years thinking I needed someone else to validate my dreams. With Vanna, I was always trying to prove that my ideas were worth supporting. But the whole time, I was the only validation I needed. Kalia smiled and raised her glass. To backing yourself? To backing yourself? I agreed. We clinked glasses and looked out at the Las Vegas skyline, bright with possibility and completely free from the shadows of backup plans and false promises. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I almost deleted it without reading, assuming it was spam, but something made me open it. I saw your presentation online. You've become everything you dreamed of being. I'm proud of you, even if I don't have the right to be anymore. I'm sorry for everything. I hope you're happy. I showed the message to Kalia over breakfast. She read it twice, then looked up at me with a questioning expression. How does that make you feel? She asked. I thought about it for a moment, waiting for anger or satisfaction or vindication to surface. Instead, I felt something unexpected, a kind of peaceful indifference. Nothing, I said. It makes me feel absolutely nothing. And that, I realized, was the most complete victory of all. I deleted the message without responding and never heard from Vanna Hesler again. The backup plan had finally been permanently deleted,